children don't just end up with technology, families end up with technology, and then they give it to their children. Our goal is to help you get to the most risk you're willing to accept.
Just do something. Doing nothing is no longer an option.
Welcome to the SafetyNet podcast by ArcCyber. My name is Josh, and I am the host and producer. And with me is this man, Sean Artizone, who's the genius, hacker, brains, and heart of the podcast.
Yeah, so it's been a while.
I need to make sure I have all the things right, to say.
Yeah, the taglines.
This is the Knocking the Rust Off episode.
Yeah.
Before we take a break until season 2.
Yeah, right. But the holidays coming up. We had the Thanksgiving holiday, and now we have the Christmas break and New Year's break. So we did have a lot going on, and I don't know, well, we won't get into all of it here, but my wife's launching her own business, and so we had to kind of put a pin in these, but we're back here to bring you the final episode of this season and talk about some pretty interesting things that the world is now becoming aware of.
You sent me an article, and I'm super curious. It's from darkreading.com, and at first when I saw it, I was like, wait, what is this? And it's like, oh, like dark web, like whatever. What is this about? This article says the title is "Safeguarding Our Children's Digital Future: A Call to Action."
Yeah.
What you sent it to me? What was on your mind when you sent this to me?
So this is incredible that this article was published December 14th, and the author's name is Arun Vishwanath, and I hope I'm pronouncing that properly. Arun, if you see this episode, I apologize if I butchered your name. But this is exactly what ArcCyber's mission is to do, is to help safeguard, our children's digital future. But, children don't just end up with technology. Families end up with technology, and then they give it to their children. And so handing the child the technology, there has to have already been some things done to that technology. And we've talked about this in past episodes. And so Arun's article hits the nail right on the head about the cyber attacks, the hackers getting more effective and pivoting. And what they've started to do is they've started to attack school systems. And school systems are a low-hanging fruit. And so as I was reading this article, I was just like, wow, yeah, this is 1,000%. You have funding that goes to these schools. If it's a public school, it's publicly funded, so federal and state money is coming to it. But a lot of times the money is stopping at the administrators, and everybody knows the money doesn't make it all the way down to the teachers. The teachers are the lowest paid part of this wheel, and they're now sitting in front of children trying to talk to them, and they're being asked, because there was an executive order that was signed, and I think I have the executive order. So the White House's National Cyber Workforce Education Strategy was published, and as part of that, they want teachers to take on the training and education, cyber hygiene, and better technology practices of using technology and giving technology to kids. Well, that's great, but now you have to either re-educate all these teachers, make them, IT experts, or you have to bring in IT experts, and IT experts, they're not cheap. Enterprise has them in droves, and government has them in droves. But the underserved markets are the home users and the schools, because they don't have the budgets for this stuff. And so his article really, really nails it. The New York State Education Department passed a computer science and digital fluency learning standard, and they've published some of these articles on their nysed.gov page. You just look up computer science and digital fluency learning standards, and we can post a link to those. But you can see what the New York State Department of Education is doing to bring this into their school systems. Well, I think New York, and we could search this too and check the information. But I think New York may have some of the higher paid teachers in the region, and so that's possible. But in a lot of these underserved areas and these underfunded areas, you're not going to find the budgets for this to bring all of this new technology education in. And so either what has to happen is either the budget grows and then you bring in these cyber experts, or the teachers themselves have to dole out the money to get educated, to become more cyber aware and things like that. Or the third choice is you bring in companies like, and this is kind of self-serving, but you bring in companies like ArcCyber and we do it all for you, and then we do the education, we do the training, and we show. Within the last week, I was introduced to another app, and actually just downloaded it, put it on my phone, and it has to do with a school district near us, and they're looking for technology mentors, specifically cyber technology mentors, where they can, you're not really a teacher, but you know how to talk about your stuff. And so I signed up for this and said, yeah, I'll volunteer some of my time to do workshops for parents or do workshops for the parents and kids to talk about this stuff. And so I haven't gotten anything yet. Again, I just signed up on it. Let's see if I can find the app. But of course I can't find it. I just thought about it. But so that's kind of what's happening, is the school systems are looking for ways to bring in technology experts to help fix these problems. And so in the dark reading article, there's mentioned the Nevada Clark County School District that was hacked, serves 300,000 students, the Nevada Clark County School District. And this school system was hacked with ransomware. There was a breach, and the school system, instead of, if you've kind of followed the trails that the article mentions, the school system wasn't very forthright with all the information. And the whole way that the breach kind of came about, or the disclosure of the breach came about, was the hacker community said, hey, we're finding all of this data of students from this school district all over the web. Does anybody know about this breach? And then, because the breach was disclosed around official channels, the official channels had no choice but to disclose the breach and kind of let it all out, let the cat all out of the bag. So just in 2022 alone, the article mentions 1,436 separate schools and colleges fell victim to cyber attacks. 1,436 schools, and if I don't even know what the averages are of the student bodies that are each one of those, but we're talking millions of students. If you really just if you have 300,000 in that district, you take all those 1,400 different schools with tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands. Who knows how big these districts are? But this, with potentially, and actually the article even says it affected over 1 million students. So that's a lot of kids who now have to either worry about cyber protection, fraud protection, something, identity theft, something happening if they've reused emails, if they've reused passwords. It's just a mess. So
Wow.
yeah,
That's insane. So, okay, these schools have kind of gone under the have been hacked, but you've also said it's probably more rare that a school is kind of on top of the game, right?
yeah.
And most schools are not. In terms of like a school system infrastructure versus like a home user and a normal family person, their infrastructure, are they basically like similar in that they're both by and large like not great? Does that make sense?
It does, yeah. Yeah, I totally get
Okay.
what you're asking there. And so really that's kind of the same, it's kind of the same refresh cycle a home user has, and a public school, or maybe a private school, some of these charter schools, because once they purchase the equipment, that was a big capital expense for them, and
Right.
they're just not going to have the budget again to do it until necessity drives them to it. And so where they may have purchased some really nice Netgear, commercial off the shelf, or COTS, we call it, equipment, and put this equipment in place, or had, a small business that kind of knows IT stuff, put these things in, and like, we're going to put your structured cabling in. And a lot of these structured cabling companies take on the part of installing network equipment too, because it's not that hard, especially if it's COTS equipment. Literally, you plug it in, you set it up, and you deploy it, and what you've done is created a flat network. And so, in a flat network, you can there's an article on what a flat network is. We can post it in here. But a flat network means every device on your network can see every other device on your network. There's no network segmentation. And the problem with home networks is they're flat. They're flat networks. And so my Roku TV, my Apple Watch, my Google thermostat, my alarm system, every single device on my home network is flat, and every device can see every device. And when you deploy a network like that, especially in school systems where there's no intelligence built into the switching and into the routing fabric, you have, we call that east-west movement, right? And east-west movement is lateral across the planes. You have a data plane and a control plane in a router and a switch. And the data plane passes the data packets. The control plane handles the control pieces of the switching. North-south movement is when you go from outside of the firewall to inside of the firewall, or inside of the firewall to outside, north and south. So that's kind of how we delineate those types of traffic. But if an attacker can get in north-south, east-west is flat. They're wide open. They are on every device in your network. And so a lot of these schools and home users have just completely flat networks. They don't understand network segmentation, and they don't have the type of equipment that allows for what are called VLANs, virtual local area networks, to create VLAN segmentation to separate their high-risk pieces of technology, like your IoT devices, like your Nest and your Tuya smart plugs and your SmartThings devices, your Philips Hues and all that kind of stuff. And they put that all in the same network as their phones and as their computers. And if they have guests that come over, oh, what's your Wi-Fi? And they let their guests jump on the same Wi-Fi network as them. And so you come to my house, you have a guest network. You can bring your trash, crappy, hacked device into my home, but you're not getting on my personal family network. That is a personal, private, isolated network that no untrusted or unknown device is allowed to be on. You'll get on the guest network, and you'll have limited bandwidth, limited access to the internet and whatever apps you're going to use. And it's a decent experience. I'm not throttling your bandwidth down to like 56K modem speed, but you're not going to get on my personal network because I don't know your cyber hygiene practices. I don't know what you do. A lot of people have these routers now. If they bought a more modern device, their router is capable of a guest network SSID. It's built in, and you can enable that guest network. A lot of times, though, if they don't deploy it right, what happens is they just create another Wi-Fi network on the same plane, and they don't turn on the guest isolation. They don't turn on the other pieces of it that would keep your guests truly from getting into your network anyway. And a malicious actor could have technology on their device, on their guest device, as they're joining their Wi-Fi, and now they've compromised that home. So schools may have the same thing. They may have deployed a Wi-Fi for their guests that come in, and the students get on it, and now the students are able to traverse back and forth and see all of the school's resources, things like that. And so if a person that knows what they're doing hasn't been a part of designing a cyber secure network, you're just waiting to have all your devices compromised, or majority of them compromised. So,
wow, that's interesting. So I'm gonna go back to one thing you said, just to kind of emphasize a point, because we have Christmas coming up, right? By the time this launches, it'll be the next week, and so people might be getting smart thermostats. People might be getting, the smart lighting situation, right? Why did you say that those like IoT devices or whatever are more risky?
yeah. So those types of technology were mass produced, and just the code was cranked out as fast as possible. And if you go to Google and just search Google IoT bug bounty, right? Google itself pays hackers like me and the community to look at their code and find bugs. So Google is actively involved in the destruction of bugs and flaws and code, and they pay hefty bounties to anyone that can find a problem in their code. And they have fantastic coders, and they put a lot of work into developing and designing their apps. Amazon, same kind of thing. They have bug bounties. They have great code writers and all that stuff. And so their IoT devices, their technology is solid because they allow peer review. They allow the open source community to come in and look for bugs and do those types of things. But a lot of these IoT manufacturers, they put their code out there, they get it, and they're trying to just get their product out as fast as possible. And so there's not a lot of updates pushed. There's not a lot of open source review. And IoT devices are literally a dime a dozen. And every widget and everything you can think of is being pushed out into the Internet of Things, right? That's what IoT stands for.
Right.
And so every, smart refrigerator, smart washer and dryer, this, that, the other thing, they're all just putting and pushing out these things. And there's not enough researchers to vet and test all of these IoT things. Now, we're the cyber community is drudgingly working our way through every device manufacturer that pops up. The device manufacturers, your smart washer manufacturers may reach out to a bug bounty team and say, hey, HackerOne community, we want you guys to try to break into our Wi-Fi connected washer and dryer or our refrigerators or whatever, and go ahead. And so the hackers have to register for the bug bounty, they have to be interested in the bug bounty, and they have to want to go after it. And a lot of times you don't find the payouts incentivizing enough. You may find a handful of people doing it. More often than not, you find the bad guys looking into these devices as the low-hanging fruit and the ways in, because if they can compromise, a piece of code, now they're on your network, and if your network's flat, they're moving across your network. So that's why, I made that comment. So,
Man, okay, that's helpful. So something popped in my head when you were talking, and I want to throw this at you, and then you can kind of dismantle the analogy. But when I was thinking about some of the things you were saying, it really feels like every phone, every home network, whatever, is almost like the government, or say like a nation, right? A country, and there are people, no matter what country you're in, right? Like, people are trying to spy on you. They're trying to maybe extort you. They're trying to get into your country illegally. They're trying to sometimes wage all out war, like
yeah,
whatever. It almost feels like our devices are almost like that, where it's like we have uh this is the government, this is the nation, and there are people trying to get into your device all the time.
mm,
And so if you don't have like different things in place to secure and protect, to review things, like whatever, then you're really just opening yourself up, like any other government, to just being invaded.
yeah, that's kind of a neat analogy. No, I like that. Um, so, when you use that, and of course every analogy breaks down at some point, but we'll pull this
Yes.
thread and see how far it goes. So
Yeah.
when you, as a government or a nation state, you don't defend the right border at the right time, yeah, now you're infiltrated, and you're brought in, and you have all of these adversaries looking to now stage a coup and replace the government. But what's the end, right? Why are they doing it, right? Do
Yeah.
they want to run, and now they have to defend? What's the thing behind it?
Mm,
And so let's just tug on those threads, right? So monetary, right? If you're at the top of the food chain, everybody's paying you. You're the one receiving all the money. So there's a monetary incentive. If you're at the top of the government food chain and you overthrow the biggest, government, and I mean technology piece, right? Now you've destroyed them, right? You've toppled that nation, and now you're the one to look out for. And so, from a monetary perspective, I'll share a personal anecdote. This just happened recently. So a few years back, and actually twice now, Yahoo, their database has been breached, and so my wife and I both have Yahoo email accounts, but we don't ever use them. Or at least I don't use them. And anytime there's a sign up thing, I always send it to her email. I'm like, that's your spam email. We'll just use that for spam. Or if we have to sign up for something, just send it to the Yahoo. Well, she gets an alert on her phone in her Yahoo email that one of her shopping accounts, the email address had been changed, the password had been changed, and thank you for your purchase. And so she was like, hey, I don't know what this is, but now I can't get into this shopping app. And I'm like, what account is it? What did you use? She was like, well, I was using my Yahoo account. I'm like, remember I told you don't ever use that for anything? Like, their database has been breached. So if their database has been breached, it's easy for them to request a password reset and this and that. So I haven't fully figured out the forensics of it yet, but I'm still working on it, on how her shopping account got attacked or hacked. So we got this thank you for your purchase notification of a $600 charge. So I keep all my cards locked and shut down until we're ready to use them. Then I unlock them, make the purchase, and then relock it. So typically this would not have happened. However, she was in the shopping app and had already had her card open and ready to use. Well, because the card was open and ready to use, and the adversary had already kicked her out, her card remained unlocked and she hadn't put it all together. The charge is made. So we start doing our research, and because the hacker wasn't able to change the ship to information, we started getting alerts from the shipper that the package will be delivered on this day and the address of where it was going. So we start looking into the house of the address of where it was going. It was going to a place in Georgia, and the place that it's going to it's called a trap house. That's what law enforcement refers to it. And a trap house is literally just an abandoned house, abandoned apartment complex. It has a physical mailing address, but nobody lives there. And so there should be a database of trap houses that shippers just don't deliver to because nobody lives there. Why would a package be going there? So that helps perpetrate the fraud. So monetarily, we found out this person purchased a PlayStation 5 with a bundle and had it sent to this trap house. Well, my wife, being the genius that she is, hit redirect on the shipper's page and had it redirected to a store where you had to walk in, present identification, and sign to retrieve the package. So then we called the local sheriff and police department and said, hey, there's a stolen package that was purchased with a fraudulent, credit card abuse. We had reported to the bank gave us the money back and all that, but the package ended up just sitting there and it's being returned to sender right now. So the shipper got their package back, the store got their money back, we got our money back, and the scammer didn't get anything. And so monetarily, there's an incentive. If you can get in and disrupt that nation state, that government, you can benefit monetarily from it. You can have things shipped to trap houses that are abandoned that nobody lives in, but it's a valid address and a shipper will ship to it. That's one incentive, right? And that's a possibility. Now, let's say you go in and you overthrow that government, right? You're the adversary and you take down Apple, right? You find a way to topple their government, right? We'll throw that in air quotes. So now what? Now you're the big Apple. You have, what is it you're after? Now you're the one that's going to have to provide the technology. Is that your goal, to be the greatest technology? So if it's a Google versus Apple thing and they're sending their spies out to destroy that, now you're the only game in town and you took Apple down. So there's that I'm the boss kind of incentive, right? And of course, industrial espionage, things like that happen all the time. So, of course, Google is going to want to know what Apple's doing, and Apple's going to want to know what Google's doing, and Samsung's going to want to find out what both of them are doing, and try to keep their phones in one or the other's hands and whatever. And so there's that incentive. And then you have I just lost that. It was another analogy. Street cred. That's what it was. So yeah, you now have that street cred where you just took down the king, or everybody thought was the king, and you have now ramped up your street cred as nobody really messes with the U.S., right? Everybody knows for the most part that we're the most powerful, most agile. We may not be the biggest, but we don't have to be the biggest because we have the most technology, and we don't need to be the biggest right now. Maybe that day will come where not having enough, humans as part of that may be, an undoing, because if you can't use your technology, now you got to go hand to hand and face to face with your adversary. So,
Right.
but yeah, there's all kinds of reasons that they would want to have that access, and maybe it's to spy, maybe it's to just spy on their people, right? So if they can
Yeah.
get in, and they can see what you're doing, they can become you, they can
Yep.
pretend they're you doing all the things that they want to get away with, and now it just
Sure.
gets laid at your door. So many reasons that you know nations invade nations, and yeah,
Right.
so kind of a neat.
Man, interesting. Yeah, I think, so this article says uh safeguarding our children's digital future, a call to action. Like, so he gives some things in here, and it's kind of specific to schools
Mhm.
and uh, schools being victims of cyber crimes. Um, like, yeah, I don't know. I'm curious from your perspective, what what are some of these call to actions that make sense for everybody?
Mhm.
What are there others you would add? Because I think you're right. Like, I mean, whether it's some kids are going to be getting their first piece of technology this
Yeah,
Christmas, right? Um, some people, you know, just the longer your technology sits unprotected, the more likely the percentage goes up that you will be hacked, that you will be a victim of cybercrime. So yeah, what are some calls to action that you would recommend to people, to actually start doing? Because I think more and more people this is the drum we keep beating, right? Like, you just need to do something.
yeah,
Like, you have to make progress in this area, and it's literally not a thing. Like, as fun as it is, right, to get a new iPhone or whatever, and it's like the unboxing experience and all these different things, right? That's not enough. Setting up your Apple ID to like do the things, like, that's not enough. There's things you have to do.
yeah.
So what are some of the things, the calls to action that you're like, we need to be mindful of this. We need to encourage people towards
Yeah.
this.
So looking at the article, it kind of rabbit trails down to a few Sophos articles. And one of the articles that they link to is the state of ransomware in education in 2023. This is a recently published article. It was July in 2023. This article came out where they surveyed 1,400 IT cybersecurity professionals across 14 countries. And what they're talking about in this article mentions the root causes of attacks, and 36% of the root causes were compromised credentials, and 29% were exploited vulnerabilities. Emails, malicious emails, and phishing were the starting points for nearly 30% of all of it. And so phishing is alive and well. It's not. It is probably one of the easiest things to do because you craft a well or you create a well-crafted phishing email, looks legit, and if you don't understand what phishing is, you have to learn what phishing is, what it looks like, how to spot it, what to do with it, and to be educated. So get educated on some of the those types of attacks and what they look like. If you don't know what it looks like, you may see most email providers nowadays are starting to include a header at the top of the email that says something like, you don't really receive email from this person and we've flagged it as suspicious. Or the good providers like Google, they are able to recognize the domain and they immediately flag the domain as spam and move it into the spam folder. Trusting those providers, there's a level of trust that you should, okay, they're doing their job. But if you put all your trust in them to do their job and you don't take some ownership stake in your own education, they're going to fail you because you're relying on somebody else to help you see and understand. And so you have to really know what is going on in technology and these pieces of interconnected devices are capable of. You don't have to be an expert, but you just have to be aware. Just like driving a car, when you first started, you had to learn the steering wheel does this, the blinker, control knob does this, the shifting, the gear shifter does this, the brake and the gas. So you're not an expert mechanic and auto builder, but you understand a lot of the functions that are safety, that are acceleration and fun. They're purposeful, like the trunk, right? The trunk has a purpose, and you put stuff in it, and you know why it's there. It doesn't make you an expert car builder or a manufacturer, but you understand the ins and outs, and you took the time to learn as you were using those pieces of technology. Most people just don't take the time to understand their technology. They just use it. They get on the web, they browse, they play their games, they do all those things, but they never really understand the capabilities of the technology. They learn about it after the fact, and so they don't understand how simple it is. Really, really simple. And matter of fact, I may in one of our upcoming episodes here, I'll just take a password list of very common passwords, and I'll use a password cracking tool, and I'll show you just how fast it is to break a password of 13 characters or less. So if you think your password is good and it's 13 characters or less, you'll be surprised at how fast and how easy it is to actually break a 13 character or less password. My wife's password for her shopping account was over 13 characters, but we're unsure, did that compromise happen because it was her password? And it was complex. It didn't have a dictionary word. I always tell her, don't use dictionary words. Don't combine dictionary words. Don't do any of that stuff. And it wasn't a trivial password. So I'm like, I don't think this is your fault. I think maybe the shopping organization, I think they had a breach, because they immediately got into your account. They took over your account. There were no flags thrown in the takeover. So here, just the order of events. Thank you for your purchase. Your name has been changed. Your address has been changed. Your email has been changed. That should alert somebody at this shopping company something's wrong. Why all of a sudden name, email address, home address, and then an uncharacteristically large purchase happens? That all should just be slapped together and say fraud, fraud, fraud.
Right.
Yeah, but so they're not even aware of what their technology is capable of. It was only after we complained, and then we never heard from a person in their fraud department. Never once got to speak to a live person in their fraud department. We had to do all the work ourselves to restore and recover our own account, and that's just terrible. Like their technology systems helped enable the fraudsters perpetrate the crime. So understanding that kind of stuff is possible if you use trivial passwords has to be real to you. Keeping your debit and credit cards locked until you really intend to use them. You're not using your card every minute of every day, and if you are, that's a whole different podcast. You can talk about the financial piece and understanding how to get out of debt. But yeah, you should not run around with your debit and credit cards unlocked. It adds a little friction to your life, but how much more friction is it to turn your card on and off than to try to chase down a criminal who's stolen $600? Now you've got to contact your bank. Now you've got to contact the police department and sheriff's department. You got to go through all this stuff. Lock your card, unlock your card. Lock your card, unlock your card. Just do something. Educate yourself. Understand the capabilities, the dangers, and make little changes over time. Get very familiar with your technology, just like you are with your car or any other piece of dangerous, tech that you use that could, cost you time and, energy. So that's a great starting.
No, that's helpful. And man, I was thinking about people. I had two thoughts. One was, I don't think it's a good excuse to not do something, to not be careful about your passwords and stuff, just because maybe. So like, I've had an email address since I was a kid, like since I was 13. That was like when I got my first email. I saw this meme recently about like one of the things you most regret is your first email address,
Yeah.
like name. I was like, actually, mine was pretty good. But like, just because you've used technology maybe for a long time, maybe you've used same password for a long time,
Mm,
and nothing's happened yet. I I I don't think that like you can't use that as a reason to not do something
yeah.
just because it hasn't happened yet. Things are getting worse and worse and
Mm,
worse. Hackers are getting smarter and smarter and smarter. The amount of hackers, like you just have to be careful to not believe the lie that just because it hasn't happened yet
yeah.
doesn't mean it will never happen. I think the other piece is, and this is a question I'm curious from your end, how you would maybe answer this. Like, what's the hump? Why don't people like there's for new behavior,
Mm,
right? There's always a reason somebody doesn't do something, right?
mm,
There's always this like, but if you can just get over
yeah.
this, then you'll start doing stuff. What are some of the humps, I guess, for why people aren't being careful, aren't just doing something?
Yeah. So, if and this, my wife would laugh at this, but if you're a guy, you don't like to stop and ask for directions. You'll figure it out. You'll get it sorted out,
Sure.
right? So maybe there's some of that, and that's not just guys. Like there's some women out there that are just like I can do this. But as you were talking, you made me think of an analogy, right? How many of us have been driving down the road, and on the road all of a sudden got a flat tire? You don't see millions of cars with flat tires. You see occasional one pulled off the side of the road, but it does happen, right? Have you, the owner of your car or the leaser of your car, have you ever gone and figured out how to remove and bring out your spare and understand where the spare is, how to use the spare? Have you ever trained yourself on that? You know you got a spare in there somewhere. The time to use the spare tools is not on the side of the road when you're being passed by 80, 90 mile an hour car traffic, right? If you don't understand how to use your spare, that's going to add way more stress to your situation when you now have that flat tire. And you may never get a flat tire, but the fact that you know how to use your spare, that should bring a little bit of peace. And so it's the
Mm.
same kind of thing. You may never get hacked, but understanding the things that are tied to the potential and all the compromise and all of the legal aspects of it that you now have to get, go through with identity theft, the monetary stuff of trying to fight with your bank to get your money back, the unlocking all of your files because you fell victim to ransomware. We did that episode back where we detonated ransomware, and all of those files were locked unless you paid the ransom. Then if you don't pay the ransom, all those files are destroyed. If you don't have an understanding of how to protect your files from something like that, you may never click on ransomware and have it detonate. But if you do, you now already know how to go about restoring your stuff and getting your life back to
Mm.
normal, prior to that event. And so if you ever find yourself on the side of the road and you didn't put the time in to understand how to use your spare tools, the spare tire, the jack, the hand crank, if you've got that. Some of the newer technology cars have a little button and the spare tire descends from underneath, and it's kind of cool. But what if that stuff breaks down? Now you got a hand crank
Yeah.
to drop the tire or lift up your trunk in your secret compartment. And if you like my wife and you keep a million things in the back of your car for no reason whatsoever, you got to pull all that stuff out of your car, set it on the side of the road. Now get your spare out, and other people are like, well, I'll just call AAA. Okay, well, AAA kind of, or whoever the roadside company is, you're going to pay a hefty price, or you're paying a hefty price because you have the roadside assistance package.
Right.
You've already paid for it. So, stuff like that, you've done something, you're going to get a wrecker come pull you out, or maybe you're lucky somebody will pull off on the side of the road and they'll help you change your tire. But if you know how to do it ahead of time, you're not freaking out. It doesn't add additional stress because you've trained yourself. That's the same thing in the military and in law enforcement and types of first responder type things. They train for as many possible scenarios that could happen as possible, so that if you're ever faced with it, you're like, oh, we trained for this. How did we know? Well, people sit around thinking of all the possible ways things could go wrong, things could go sideways. You're moving from building to building, you enter a building, and now they're even rethinking how they stack up as they move from door to door, entry to entry, because too many people were getting shot as they make initial entry, because they have to get past, there's a term that they use, but they have to get past that response time, basically. But the adversary is sitting there waiting to just pull the trigger. They have already cleared that hurdle, and you now have to clear that as you're entering an unknown. And so they help train and prepare you for all those types of things through scenarios. Now, I'm not suggesting that your family. Actually, maybe I am. If you've never suffered a fire in your home, right? You don't know what it's going to be like when you have to escape out of your window. But families that have suffered fires, you can almost guarantee they have fire extinguishers all throughout their house. They have a plan of how to escape their home and have a family meeting area. Schools and buildings do fire drills all the time. Do we do those at home for ourselves? I don't know anybody. I haven't met a person who says, "Oh, we just practiced our fire drill this week," and I had my son climbing out of our two-story window. Have you ever thought about how your child is going to get out of a two-story window? They make those bags of deployable ladders that you can leave in your child's room. You bolt it to the window, and it's real small form factor. But and then you show your child how to use it. So in the case of that event, they know how to open the window, they know how to remove the screen, they know how to deploy the ladder and get themselves out of harm's way. If you don't ever practice it, though, all you have is a bag screwed to your wall. And, so this is kind of all the same stuff. You have to really see the cyber. There's all kinds of great things that technology has made this possible. We're sitting in two different locations, and it's like we're sitting right next to each other. We both have great beards, and so technology has enabled a lot of things. But if you don't understand how to use it in a possible scenario that could affect your life and your livelihood, you haven't prepared yourself. And so you have to be willing to get across that hump yourself, because we can't do it for you. We can help you do it.
So, yeah. So I'm curious, like, so, because I can just hear the pushback of, like, either, okay, all that's just overwhelming. Like, thinking about all the different possible scenarios, like, that's just overwhelming. The other thing I was thinking about is, like, uh you're talking about having the thing but not using it, or like not training for it or whatever. It's like having a password manager but not actually
Right.
like using it.
Yeah.
Like, we had the the
Kefir.
president of
Yeah.
Iron Vest, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
Kafir. Like, if you don't use Iron Vest, there's no point in
Yeah.
having it. Like, it's not that, because I want people to be clear. It's not that you're just like a paranoid like person, or like, well, maybe
Less
you are,
paranoid.
but no, I'm just kidding. It's not just fear
Yeah.
mongering. It's not just paranoia. And one of the things you said, all these like possible or potential
Yeah.
scenarios, I would actually say
Mm.
probable
Yeah.
scenarios when it comes to technology. Like, yeah, maybe you never have a house fire, but like, in the technology world, it's actually probable you will experience
Yeah.
something. It may be low level, it may be full on identity fraud, or like, whatever, ransomware, but like, how I think what I don't want people to hear is that, you're just paranoid and you're just like throwing all these things out there. These are actual threats that people that we know. Like, I've experienced low level
Mm.
stuff. My grandma has, like, people in my family have experienced
Yeah.
stuff. And like, my father-in-law, something happened to his computer not too long ago, a couple months ago. And uh praise God, he had the thought to like not click on the
Yeah.
thing, because I was like, yep, that would have been really bad for you. And so I like went through and like cleared out some stuff. But like, uh yeah, these things happen all the
Yeah.
time. So don't think it's just somewhere out there. Like it is happening. It is getting closer and
Yeah.
closer. So just be
Yeah.
prepared. Like don't go out in the rain when you know it's gonna rain. Like or without like an
Yeah.
umbrella or something.
And if you
Like
do, be willing to accept the
just
consequences of that too. Yeah.
exactly. So it's like if you're cool with like having your life upended, then
Yeah.
fine, yeah, you can be unsecure, like
That's
whatever. But like it's very you have to
yeah.
it's either it's I feel like it's just like with anything. Uh there was something I heard recently. It's like you don't just drift into a good
Yeah.
place, right?
Yeah. He drifted away.
Whether it's
Yeah.
relationships or whatever. And so, like, you have to be making incremental
Yeah.
steps towards
Intentional.
things in order to, like,
Yeah.
yes, be intentional, be moving towards being more secure, being more safe online, to listening to these episodes that we've done and kind of taking a next
Yeah.
step towards your cybersecurity, because otherwise you might find yourself in a really bad scenario that if you had just taken the time to like do little things one
Yeah.
by one. And we've talked about like, maybe we need to like make a course on this, or it's
Yeah.
like these are the
Yeah.
basics, and it's like we refresh it as technology moves. But um step one is you should probably make sure you've listened to all of our
Yeah.
episodes and take one
Yeah.
thing per episode that you're gonna try to
Yeah.
do.
The remember that we've said this before, you and I, and ArcCyber's purpose. You're never going to remove 100% of the risk. And I gave the analogy of
Right.
how to give you the most secure device. Right, you bury it in the hole and never turn it on. And
Right.
so our goal is to help you get to the most risk you're willing to accept. Right, and so the
Yeah.
most risk you're willing to accept may look different for your family than it does for my family or for your family, Josh, and whatever. And so
Yeah.
we want to help you understand the risk by bringing out all of this information, and we want to help you understand, to educate you of as many possible vectors and attack things as possible. So we're not trying to make you afraid, we're trying to make you understand these are the risks
Yeah.
that you are essentially either rejecting or accepting. And if you do
Yep.
this, then we reduce this risk. If you do this and this, we've reduced these risks even more significantly. If we don't do these things, you're accepting this risk, and this could be a factor. Just like when you get out last night when we went to our American Legion. I'm a part of American Legion Riders motorcycle thing, and they had their Legion Riders Christmas party. As we were getting into deciding which vehicle we're going to take, I was like, we're going to take the 250 because tonight it's late. It's later, I should say. It was around 7 o'clock, and this is the season for Christmas parties, and this is the season for drunk drivers. I said, so I want to give
Mm-hmm.
us a little bit of an advantage, and if we're going to be in something, I'd like it to be bigger and heavier, safer. Yeah.
Safer
So
vehicle.
I
Yeah.
reduced some of the risk of driving in a smaller car
Yep.
on backcountry roads in the dark,
Yep.
later at night, with the potential of drunk drivers by reducing some of that
Sure.
risk. So that's really, I accepted the fact. I got out on the roads. We drove to the party, had a great time, got to meet some
Yep.
really great older Legionnaire members. And if you don't know what the American Legion is, by the way, I would recommend checking into it. If you're a military veteran or you're a child of a military veteran, the American Legion is for you and your family. We'll do a plug for the American Legion, but I only just learned about
That's
it. I'm, in my 40s, almost in my 50s. Wow. And I only am now just learning about what this organization is and what it does for vets and their families. And highly encourage you to go check it out because there's resources. I connected with some older vets, got to learn some of their stories and just kind of bond and brotherhood, sisterhood. Anyway, I accepted the risk of getting on the road at night, but I reduced some of the
yeah.
risk to my family by putting myself in a bigger vehicle. So, that's what
Sure.
we want to
Yeah.
do for you.
Which that's a good analogy, right? Because like you were going somewhere to
Hmm.
connect,
Hmm.
right? And a lot of what we want to do with technology is to connect with
Yeah.
people. And so but you do need to make sure the vehicle
Yeah,
you're
yeah,
using is safer,
exactly.
right? Like, there's all sorts of
Yeah,
analogies. That's
right. I love
great.
it. Yeah, I think I do. I think we use a lot of
Okay,
analogies and things like
we
we
we do,
speak in
which is great
parables.
because
Yeah,
you kind of need to.
right.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes. So okay, let's start wrapping this up. This is the final episode of season
woo.
one of the Safety Net podcast. So we kind of decided we're going to do this initial season, kind of regroup. We have holidays coming up and all that, and figure out some things. What you said, you wanted to share some
Yeah,
things. What are some of the things you want to share?
yeah. So through the course of our podcast and connections with ministries, church organizations, schools, all these things, I was introduced to a woman who has been speaking in the school world about bringing technology to schools and families. And she's currently working on her PhD. She is an expert in her field, and she also helped to bring one of the most powerful movements into the public education system back in the 90s. And she's going to be a guest on our show. And she's going to talk about a lot of the things that she's been talking about now for a decade. She saw this happening early on when technology started moving down, and she stayed very connected to it. She stayed very vocal about it. She stayed well informed, and she is pretty technologically savvy, and I'm super excited to have had this connection. And we're not going to give away her name yet, but on the episode, we're going to have her on for a few episodes because she has a lot to say. She actually does speaking forums. She travels the country. She's been to D.C. To speak in front of Congress and senators and all kinds of stuff like that. And like I said, she's working on her PhD. So once that's wrapped up, her and I have some things planned. She's always been the you need to do something person. She's been like the mantra of just do
Awesome.
something. And she never had the I can help you do it guy. And now she's like, you're the I can help you do it guy to my just do something message. Because after these conferences that she would be having, people would come up to her, you said all these great things and we want to do these things. How do we do it? I don't know. Like, I'm not the cyber
Right.
guy. And so when we connected,
Right.
it was a friend of ours, Dustin Renz, when he connected us, and I just like started talking. It was like, oh my goodness, like this is incredible. Like you do the thing and talk about the thing, and then we'll help you do the thing. Like when whatever. So super
Yes.
excited about having her on the show for a few episodes, and in next season, we're going to have we had some of our greatest responses to videos to actually showing live malware, showing live viruses, showing live things. And so what we'll do in season 2 is also incorporate some of those things where you can actually see what different things are going on in the cyber world. We'll demonstrate them live for you. I talked about the password cracking. We're going to do that. We're going to show you how easy and trivial it is to break passwords of various sizes and complexity and things like that. So you'll get live, like seeing exactly how that stuff's going to happen. And there may be some other pretty exciting things that we're not going to reveal just yet. But you don't want to miss it. You're not going
Yes.
to want to miss it. It is going to be pretty awesome. Also, the Holiday Hack Challenge is happening right now. The Sands Holiday Hack Challenge, it's
Nice.
free. It's open to everyone. The contest part of the Holiday Hack Challenge ends January 5th, but you can get into the environment and hack your way through. Uh, I'm I'm pretty far into it so far. It's an exciting challenge this year. Instead of snow and mountains, we're now at the beaches. So there's sand and palm trees, and it's kind of a fun Christmassy theme. But I'm looking forward to getting my new holiday hack challenge Sans winter hoodie when I submit my final challenge on there. So yeah, the 2023
Nice.
holiday hack challenge, Sans Institute. If you don't know what the Sans
That's
Institute is, go check them out. If you have somebody that's looking to get trained, looking to get certified, go check out SANS. If you want to be a hacker like me, offensive security, go check out offensive security. Work on getting your OSCP, work on getting your OSCE, all the offensive security certifications that the hackers have out there. So, yeah.
Love it. That's great. Well, so yeah, everybody, if you want to keep up with kind of the next iteration of the Safety Net podcast, what ArcCyber is doing, make sure you're subscribed on YouTube, on Instagram, Facebook, all the things. Make sure you do that. Also, again, this is Sean does different things, right? He helps different organizations out, but he also helps families like yours for free. In order to do it for free, though, because he has a lot going on, he has different things going on. This is a crowd funded thing. So, we do look for people to help sponsor this show, helping Sean's time to help other families kind of sit down and figure out, okay, like he was saying, what's the level of risk you want to take? How secure do you want your family to be? What kinds of devices do you have? What's your family makeup? All those sorts of things Sean helps, but we need your help so that other people can be helped. So there's a link in the show notes. You can go to arccyber.com. There's a link up there. Pay it forward, and that will help Sean continue helping other families be more secure and just doing something. So check those things out. Make sure you're subscribed and be on the lookout for more exciting things in season 2 of the Safety Net podcast.